I make this post not just as a warning, but as a word of caution, should you find yourself in a similar situation to my own. I was born as an army brat to a dad who had seen enough during his service in the army. I ended up joining the army when I was just 19, and serving for 12 years before taking 4 tours in Afghanistan. During the last one, I took a bunch of shrapnel from a grenade that nearly left me paralyzed during a routine mission. Some bits of shrapnel were still lodged too close to my spine to be removed, thus preventing me from returning to active duty. It also made it a pain to go through metal detectors, but I digress. During the first 2 years back, it took me some time to get readjusted. I had lost a lot of good friends that I grew up with while I was over there, and I did some things that I am not proud of. I'd also lost most of my platoon in the explosion that sent me out of the service with a Purple Heart and a boot imprint on my ass. When I got back to the States and my home in Tennessee, I got a nice disability pension and a job doing security for a mall. A friend of my mom knew the owner, and they were looking for a new night shift guard. And knowing that I couldn't just sit still at my house doing nothing after I got back, she talked the mall into hiring me so I'd have something to occupy my time. The catch being is that once a week I'd have to see a shrink to evaluate my mental health. I've been having a lot of nightmares and suffering from insomnia since I got back, which makes sense with PTSD and all that. But the problem I was having is that I wasn't dreaming about Afghanistan and the stuff we did over there. For months I had this same dream over and over about being in a cavern or some sort of cave. And just beyond my flashlight's light is this huge gaping hole as if it was the edge of the abyss. A set of stairs carved into the rock leading into it. And every night, when I had that dream, I'd get just a little bit closer to looking over the edge. The doc talked some sympathy mumbo-jumbo about how it would fade in time, but I knew he was full of it. I nodded off while doing one of my shifts as a night guard, and I remember the dream in almost perfect detail, because in that dream, I started descending the stairs, until I reached the bottom. And there, at the bottom of the stairs, were winding corridors in some sort of labyrinth. I awoke with a startle because the alarm telling me that my shift had ended went off. Later, my shrink told me I must be making progress in my treatment for the dream to change so drastically. And so another few months flew by, and in these dreams I would slowly make my way through the labyrinth. Sometimes I'd reach a dead end and wake up. And then in the next dream, the following night, I'd be at the start of the labyrinth all over again. A year had passed since I'd gotten back from Afghanistan. It was around this time that I had, in the dream, reached the end of the labyrinth. Just past the doorway, at the end of the labyrinth, was a long corridor, and at the end, just beyond my flashlight's ability to pierce the darkness, was a door. The door was made of wood. It had a barred window in the center of it. It wasn't very wide, but just wide enough to stick maybe one arm through. No more, no less. Over the next few nights, I collected my courage in the dream and moved forward. When I had last stood upon the threshold, I leaned close to the opening, gazing into the room of pure darkness. I listened for a sound, but all I could hear was nothing more than cave drippings. I turned away from the door or window to look for a hand to open the door. It was then that I heard a whisper from the window. Startled, I looked back at the window to see a face staring back at me, with bright yellow eyes and a wide, wicked smile. The eyes had a strange glow, as if there was no light behind them. No life behind those hollow, glowing orbs in its eye sockets. It lunged out to grab me through the bars and I woke up. After that, I couldn't sleep, even more than usual. I was taking everything to stay awake. I couldn't sleep, and I wouldn't, but eventually, everyone started taking notice that I wasn't sleeping. And so my shrink and my family members decided that I could use some fresh air. So my dad decided to take me hiking. I agreed because I didn't want to argue with them, and honestly, I was looking for any way to escape those dreams. Those nightmares. During our first night out, sleep found me, and for once I didn't dream about that damn cave or anything else in it. My mood improved drastically, feeling as if something is finally going right in my life. I was starting to feel more excited about the hike. While we were on the trail, we decided to take a shortcut that led us up a steep bit of mountain. Just as my old man had found a flat path to continue on, there was a sudden earthquake and a rock slide, causing me to tumble down the mountain. Luckily, we weren't high up, and a couple of tree branches broke my fall before I landed hard on the ground. It collapsed beneath me, and I fell through the earth's surface. It took me a second to get my bearings. My first objective was to get my flashlight out and look for a way out. After a minute or two, I found my flashlight. I turned it on, and after a simple glance around at my surroundings, a chill went down my spine. My blood went as cold as ice, and I almost couldn't breathe. I was in the cave, and I wasn't dreaming. I screamed, I hollered, and I cried out for help.
Help! Anyone help, please!
The worst part of the isolation is imagination. As it can be helpful, it can also be torturous. I could not tell if what I heard was from behind me, or just my imagination. Came as a whisper behind me. I jumped and clawed at the wall in attempt to escape. I begged for someone, anyone to help me. I screamed again for help, and again no answer came. I stood there for what seemed like hours. I could see the sun just beginning to fall behind the mountains from the gap in the ceiling that I've fallen through. Seeing as I had no other option, I headed towards the abyss. I was shaking, and I could barely hold my flashlight straight. As I descended the stairs, I could hear the familiar drips and drops of the cave that I had heard in my dreams, as if nothing had changed. Until at last, I reached the labyrinth. I knew the path through it, and so I went through, dreading each and every step towards the end of it. When I saw the corridor, and what was at the end of it, all of my hair stood up on end, and my skeleton was ready to jump out of my skin, because the door for my nightmares was there in front of me. And for a brief moment, I thought I could breathe lightly because the door was closed. And again, I hoped it was just my imagination torturing me. just as you stare away into a dark space and imagine fiendish figures crawling out, crawling their way to get to you. Figures from your deepest, darkest nightmares. My feet were glued to the ground in terror. The door appeared to be opening. I still hoped it was just my imagination, but then I saw it. The figure from my nightmares in reality. I could see its fingers stretched outside of the door as they were long shadows from a distant light. Its long fingers wrapped around the door frame. As it continued to open the door, its smile came into view, and I felt a terror like no other. It whispered. It motioned a finger for me to come closer. It screamed,
I said free me.
Its smile turned into a snarl. It was then that I finally found my feet, and I turned to run, only to find it standing at the other end of the hall. Its mangled form contorted and camouflaged into the shadows, preventing me from seeing what truly stood before me. It extended its fingers like claws as it slowly started to increase its pace and close the distance between us. Having no choice, I ran to the door, closing it behind me. I had made a grave mistake. As I turned back to look through the bars of the door, I found that the creature was not there. Came as a whisper behind me. I could and would not turn around. I placed my hands on the bars. I began to recite a mantra that my therapist had said would help with the nightmares. And for once, I prayed he was right.
This is a dream. This is a dream. It must be, for it has no hold on me.
I said. I could feel that thing approaching me. It reached out its hands and clasped them over my hands that were gripping the bars. They were colder than cold, and felt like the roughest sandpaper. A thought popped into my head. If the door was open earlier, then it is unlocked, and all I have to do is push it open, and I will be free.
No.
I screamed aloud. Coming to my senses, I realized that I had not opened the door. I had closed it, and if I open it now, I will set it free. It whispered into my ear, its breath smelling of some wretched combination of sweet, foul, spicy, and strangely like copper.
I will not set you free,
I said to it. Its grip tightened, and I could feel my knuckles beginning to bleed from its claws digging into my hand, and its sandpaper skin rubbing against mine. It then spoke more than it had ever before.
if you will not free me, you will see. You cannot flee. Another will come, and maybe they will set me free. You will have nowhere to run, child of the will see that you resist in vain as blood rains, flooding and filling your seas. The skies will darken as your star, and thus the light behind your eyes die. You will have nowhere to hide. I guarantee the end will be. You will see. I will be set free.
It was then that I awoke in an ambulance. When I asked what happened, my dad told me that he got park rangers to help search for me after my tumble. After about 20 minutes, they found me unconscious in a cave I had fallen into through a broken ceiling. They didn't bother exploring it. They just rope-tied someone to grab me and pulled me up. Upon returning home, I told only my father and my shrink what happened. My shrink almost laughed in my face when I described the events. My dad, however, knows a thing or two about fear, and knows when it makes a man tell the truth about terrors he has seen. Besides, he was there when they found me in the cave. He went back to the trail a day after we got home, with the intent of sealing the cave with some old army explosives he kept from his years in the service. I wouldn't go back. He looked for hours and found no entrance. He had found where it should have been, but he only found a smooth stone where there should have been a cracked rock that acted as the broken ceiling that opened into the cave. But nothing. He even tried breaking it to see if he could find the cave, but it was as if there was nothing under the stone. The dreams visit me less frequently than they used to. In them, I am in the pitch black cell sitting in the corner by the door. As it sits in the opposite corner, its eyes barely illuminating its wicked smile, as it stares at me and repeats this chant. If you find yourself in the cave with an abyss, don't descend the stairs. Don't go through the labyrinth at the bottom. And for the love of God, don't open that door. You do not know what you might set free. I make this warning because in every other dream, when I am in the cell with that thing between its chanting and the water drip drops of the cave, I could swear that I hear distant footsteps.